I've gotten up today. I tell you, Susie, I have gotten up today. I put the lippy on. I've got actually put one of my dresses that I usually wear to work on, and I've come out to the shed. I'm motivated Monday because this is what we have to do, don't we, to keep ourselves going through the week. And I want to everybody who has not met Susie, this is the wonderful Suzy Brown from tinyStudio magazine. Now, Susie and I do go way, way back. Susie, I first met Susie when she lived in Central Hawke's Bay, and she used to come up to the skein store and most often was found head down, bum up out of a wicker basket in our remnants and thread waste corner trying to dig out any crazy piece of textured yarn that we may have come out from the mill.
It was such a treasure trove.
I know, and you troved in the treasure quite a lot. Yes. We miss you.
I found some wonderful goodies in there.
I know.
All the little, ends of this, and some of the
textures. Sad day when you really moved, Susie. We missed you. So Susie was a real regular feature with us, but that's all right because you've moved over to the other bay.
Well, I'm in Hamilton now.
Yeah.
So I'm missing the sea, missing the ocean.
Yeah.
And skeins, of course.
But that's okay because we catch up when through Creative Fibre quite often as well. Exactly. So I wanted to get Susie on. As everyone knows, I'm a huge fan of the magazine, and we have started a relationship with tinyStudio. So Susie, tell us a wee bit more about you and how. I mean, let's face it, entering the world of media is not for the faint-hearted. So why?
No. Well, it kind of just organically happened. I was running Fibre Goodness, which I started years ago. I think it was 2013 was our first course that Arlene Thayer from the US and I started together, and it was while I was still living in the Netherlands. So it was really quite a sort of international group that we had. And one of our goals was to connect people. There were a lot of people that were spinning in isolation or in small areas in different countries that didn't necessarily have contact. So we wanted to create a community where people could gather up and connect. And we started off with our mothership course, the Journey to the Golden Fleece, which was based around the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. We haven't run that for a little while yet. I'm thinking about revising it and coming back. Anyway, so I was running the courses for some years, and we've added to them over time. And it sort of got to a point where I was feeling like I'd done all the courses I could do. I did all the fibre prep ones. I've got lots and lots of spinning stuff, YouTube tutorials, all kinds of things going on. And I was looking for, what's my next thing?
Yeah.
Because I'm maybe a little bit of a workaholic. I mean, I'm the only one in the house that isn't bored.
Sounds a bit like me, yeah.
Yeah. So, I've still got a long list of things that I'm trying to do. So kind of the next thing was bringing together, I have a love of making static pages. Mm-hmm. We started off with a website and I was heavily involved in building the website. I'm sort of passing it to Evanita now because she's better at it than I am. But I love making static pages, and I originally worked in a newspaper office down in Lower Hutt in the pre-press, putting ad pages together. I loved it. It was one of my favorite jobs. And it was one of the things I've enjoyed about curriculum design and development, which I did at university. And then the online courses I made, of course, had a lot of, written content. So I thought, well, if I expanded that out into making actual magazines, I did the Big Book of Fibre Rainbows. It took me years, but I really loved the process. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that as a magazine. Would people really want a magazine? And I'm looking at what's around and thinking, there is a gap there. And the gap for me was, as a spinner, I love all the other crafts as well, and I find inspiration in all those. So my goal was to create a publication that included all those extra things, stitching, felting, weaving, all the yarn related crafts in one place. And I have to say I've been incredibly lucky and blessed to have had so many amazing contributors. We've been running we're just on our 6th issue at the moment. It's our current issue, and it's quarterly. It comes out every 3 months. And it's, let's find an example here. This is our latest one. And I love it because I can also highlight some of our New Zealand makers as well.
Now,
This
just
is Anita from Rogue Linen down
so
in the
to
South Side.
reiterate for people, I mean, Susie's holding up a hard copy book, and I know I
This
have.
is hard copy.
Yeah, but it is actually a digital magazine. So the best thing is that if you're wanting to get hold of the magazine, and I will make sure that I get those links. Actually, I'll do that right now while I'm sitting here.
I'm actually just going to see if I can share this to my group page.
Yeah. So if you're wanting to get hold of the magazine, it is digital and it's a digital subscription. So you don't. So it's instant. So it means that you'll be able to go in, you'll be able to gather the subscription, and you'll be able to get it straight away. So, but it is, as you said, being able to share makers' stories. But one of the things I've loved about it personally is the fact that it is a global publication. You've got makers from all around the world, and it's. I mean, I've been talking about the project I'm working on at the moment, and I built the entire project around a single yarn. So I had a single yarn that was the basis of the decision to do the project. In fact, I've got it here because I had been working on it this morning, and I was quite pleased. I was in a Zoom knit group this morning, which was a really, really wonderful surprise. I didn't expect to be there this morning. It was great because I caught up with some people that I hadn't seen for a number of weeks. So my entire project it's a piece of colour work, but it's the colour work that I'm working on now is a Noro yarn. And so as you can see, I'm now starting to get some really nice stuff happening.
I love that colour.
Yeah, and so this is the yarn here, and it was not even a complete ball. I'd used it in another project, and I'd taken inspiration from this, and I've been sort of saying about how you have, how we make yarns and do things, but it's often when you get people like the Noro story, they just do things so differently to everybody else, and the inspiration that you're able to draw from something singular as a ball of yarn to actually be able to translate across a garment or a project or another field. And I mean, you see that all the time. And I just find that there's a huge amount of cross-pollination. The number of knitters that, they'll often knit and then try crochet, or crochet and try knitting. But weaving is another one. You can see that with particular if you love texture, weaving is wonderful for those that love texture.
And you could even turn it into sewing your own garments as well. Yeah. Which is something I aspire to but haven't yet achieved. If you can weave up cloth rather than an item, you can actually weave it into cloth and cut that up and sew it as well. And we have had actually in the current issue, we've had someone from the UK who does that specifically, and just beautiful clothing out of it. It's all very inspiring. And I think having that crossover in the magazine, it also gives us a lot of scope to really pull people in from lots of different places and different disciplines too, which I find quite exciting. So really, I made the magazine that I wanted to read myself.
Yeah. But it's more than just the magazine though, Susie. I think one of the secrets to your success is that you've gone and taken all the elements of what you've done in recent years, and you've actually not just created a magazine, you've created a tinyStudio community. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, like I said, community has always been a really important part of what we started with, and it's always been a focus for me as well. And one of the things that we've just started with the magazine, which I really loved in this current issue, is what we're calling community makes. So we do get a lot of people posting on a page, and I really get excited to see people coming in and sharing their work with us. And so we've actually made a feature in the magazine with a bunch of pages taking those community makes works and putting them into the magazine. And I love to be able to share ideas with people. I just put out a free workshop. Actually, it was a workshop I taught at Macrame Camp earlier this year. We were so lucky to get that in before everything went crazy.
Wow.
It was just in time, really. Stuff wasn't spreading at that point, so it was very lucky. And so I taught a workshop there, which again uses up bits of stash. Really, it's how to combine it on a HECO into a usable amount, so you can get lots of all your bits and pieces, which is a spinny. You end up with lots of bits and pieces of fluff. And I've created a design system that uses patterns, which are, this is my inspiration from knitting and chart work with knitting, really, is to create a pattern on the hackle and then fill it up with the fibre that we've got into something repeatable, so you can actually make it projects worth.
So for those that don't know what a hackle is, now this is how I'm going to explain it, and then you can tell people properly. It kind of looks like a large flea comb that you comb out, or pet hair comb, upside down with lots of little prongs.
All the spikes sticking up.
Either that or a medieval torture device, whatever.
That's what I call it. It's it's like a long strip with lots of spikes in it. Well, they're called tines, but spikes. And I use a double row one and so you can load it up with fibre, and then pull it off into something spinnable. And it makes you can make beautiful yarns from it. Actually, everything's out of reach here.
No, sorry, I'd never seen one before ever. So I took a group. Last time Susie and I saw each other in real life was November. Oh, actually, it was the beginning of December, wasn't it? By the time we got to you,
I was on your cruise.
Yeah, so I had a cruise group that I took around New Zealand, and we went to Macrame, and Susie came across to Hamilton to do a class, and you had that hackle there. And as I said, I'm like what I call a rudimentary spinner. I am, I don't I buy prepared tops already. I don't prepare my own top. I'm lazy. And to be honest with you, I mean, I have a mill, Susie. Why would I bother?
I know, exactly. You got it all right there.
And you know what? So, I mean, I do spin stuff that we do have come through, and I'm really lucky that whenever we do coloured trials, particularly on stock dyed or space dyed fibre, which is not often, or if we get wonderful natural fibre through, there are small amounts that might, be siphoned off for hand spinning purposes. But for me, I still buy there are so many wonderful fibre artisans out there so that's what I do. But seeing this hackle, because the other thing I often will end up with is I will spin something up, but you do end up with little scrappy bits and pieces. This hackle is amazing because it is a good way of using up all those. It's almost like the fibre or spinning version of having a scraps bag for yarn. I mean, you can fire anything on that thing.
Yeah, and you can combine it all into beautiful yarns as well. So it's it means you can take your comb top, which is what you buy commercially, and mix it all up, but still get comb top.
Yeah.
Rather than carding it, which gives you something a lot fluffier and more woolen. So, yeah, it's a wonderful system to use. So I know since everything's gone crazy and we're all in lockdown, there've been a lot of online spin groups, and so on come up, and we have run one in our group. And we'll run more. But I sort of looked at what everyone was doing, and I realized that, a lot of people are doing these online spin groups, and it's going to get to a saturation point where everyone's like, oh, I can't do any more online spin groups. And I wanted to try and provide something that was a little bit different, that would still sort of provide some entertainment. And so I've done this free workshop, put that all online. There's a handbook to download to go with it. And there's a 40-minute video with that, and I've made that completely free. And I've also started a little audiobook session. Each week I'm going to have 3 chapters of a book that I'm reading as an audiobook. So it'll run like a podcast.
Actually, basically. We're going to stop. I tell you why, because I think we're sitting in the wrong format.
Are we?
Oh, hold on, watching live.
I'll just have a quick look on my screen. I don't know. Who have we got in our audience? Do we look okay?
I was just going to say,
I can see on my page, I can see the 2 of us.
Oh, we can. And that's all right. I just see, I'm still so new to this technology. I'm thinking, oh, no, I know. We're chatting away. And no one can see us. But everyone's saying good morning. So I'm assuming they can.
Yeah. I think we're okay.
Oh, gosh.
Evanita's here. Yay. Evanita's like, whenever I do that same panic, I'm like, Evanita, is it all right? And then she fixes things.
Oh, Evanita is there, so I can see she's there.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, she says we're good.
I don't know about you, Sue. This technology, it is just...
Oh. Yeah. Like I said, I struggle with making websites and that kind of thing, anything that has movement and activity. And what happens with this technology stuff, I'm quite good with it. I can work it all out, but the trouble is I work it out and then it just goes out of my head. So every time I do something, I have to work it out from the beginning all over again.
Yeah, you're actually much better than I am, but yeah. Oh. So anyway, let's get back, because what made me think of it, I haven't done it, is Glenys is here too from Macrame. Great.
Hi, Glenys. And it's here too.
Is you were saying about that video, so we're going to make sure that we can get that link up into the comments so people can actually get access to that. Yeah.
It's maybe I can type it, I'm not sure. It's just in our blog. Evanita might be able to drop it in there for us.
Yeah, the latest blog. Evanita, you're not just there to watch, you can. Well, one of the things, because when we visited in November, and that's, I think, in terms of people are wanting to try other crafts, and one of the things that I often noticed is that when people go to learn how to spin, they think, I could never spin, it's too hard. And Glenys and her family were wonderful, because we arrived and they had produced handmade, just with doweling, a little hook, a CD. Yeah. And I think you kind of had a little toggle thing in there, but it's a pity, because it's, unfortunately, I've got it and I've kept it because I love it, but it's at work. It's in my office at work, so I'm unable to get it. Yeah, it's trapped. It's been held hostage. Yeah. And some fibre, and we gave everybody the opportunity to actually try spinning. And I have to say, for people, if you're actually going to give yourself some time, learning how to spin, even with the most basic of drop spindles, I actually think it took me a lot less time to learn how to spin. Like, you can actually get something that is quite usable much faster than what you can actually when you go to learn how to knit. I mean, would you agree with that, Susie? When you
I mean, it's easier than juggling.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually, if you rationalize it to yourself, because I know it can be a bit frustrating when you start. The fibre will break, or you get too much twist. It's either too much or not enough.
Not enough.
It's all about the twist. But if you think about it, people have been doing this since we started wearing clothes, really. As a society, so it's not rocket science. Anyone can learn to spin. It's just a little bit of patience and perseverance, and that's all it takes. And it's really an incredibly satisfying thing to do. I've got a couple of something in that I have got in reach here. Some of my recent spinning. Most people know me for doing art yarns, things like this.
Yeah. To be honest, when you guys, if you're not a spinner and you want to start spinning, or you're actually able to spin as art yarn, and then once you actually start getting proficient, it's really hard. You start
spinning really big and bulky, but I really love all the textured things. Let's hold it up that way. So this is a mix of cotton, bamboo, and
I was just going to
merino.
say, you've gone and put a wrap around that, haven't you?
Yeah, this is all. It's multiple plies, and it's got little locks in there.
Yeah, and I do small quantities
of this, and then larger quantities of this kind of. Where are we? This kind of thing. You see, it's not very. If I put it right in there, you might be able to see better.
Yeah. Oh, Evanita, thank you very much for putting that link.
Oh, thanks, Evanita. So I do things like that, and then I can combine them into things. And this is my goal: this is going to be a shawl, and it's an ocean theme, and it's going to have a little bit of this sort of, white foam through it. So my spinning now is more. I used to spin just because I love spinning. Yeah, and it's particularly with the art yarns. But now I tend to focus more on actual projects that I think I'd like to do one day when I have time to do them. This has been sitting here for a little while. But this is just some gorgeous, soft, squishy merino that I spun up just fine, very traditional. But then I'm going to mix it in with a little bit of really fun texture as well. So
one of the items,
I keep those little challenges going.
Well, and that's the thing for, like, I know for me, last winter, I went through and discovered a lot of the initial yarns, and they were all in tiny little hanks, because I would spin off a little bit and then would have a rest, and I learned how to spin. I had the wonderful Maree Porteous, and I know that what people from the Bay know.
She taught me. She
taught me too. And Maree, she did night school, and she did spinning in night school. Remember the community classes you used to be able to take? At night? And so I didn't do that. I just missed it. I'd contacted her, and they just finished, and and I said to her, I really do want to learn. And I was right in the middle of having our kids. I just had my first child, and she lived very nearby, and she said, oh, we'll just come to the house, I'll teach you at the house. So and so what had sparked is my husband had bought me a spinning wheel for Mother's Day, my first Mother's Day.
Oh, nice.
He bought me a spinning wheel, bless him, and an Ashram trad. So
Yep.
off to Maree's I went with my traddy in the car, and I would go once a week around there to start learning. So every little bobbin that I would do with her, I kept, and I found them in a bag last year, and I still had them all. And some of them were, definitely more in the art yarn category than the.
Well, let's say learner's yarn. Learner's yarn is different again, because art yarn to me is often very consciously created and very controlled. Yeah. Whereas beginner's yarn, I mean, you only ever get to do that once.
Yeah, exactly. And I knitted a lot of it up. Like, I actually thought, you know what, I'm going to pull this together. So what I did for that, like, I thought I had knitted it all up, because I'd made a vest for my second son. By the time he was about 3 or 4, I'd found it, and I knitted a vest of and I called it the Evolution vest, and I started at the bottom with those earlier yarns, and then as I moved up the vest, as each spindle was slightly different, I'd mulled them all out, and so then that way you could actually see how my spinning progressed from those earlier skeins all the way through, and it was actually a really joyous thing to be able to do. And I've talked a lot about during the quarantine diaries about journeys. We all take these crafting journeys, don't we? And I think sometimes it's really nice to actually dig up and be reminiscent and rejoice the things that we've done in the past, and actually look at those single skeins that you may have spun and go, you know what, let's rejoice this. Let's do something with it. Let's actually give it the respect that it deserves, and not just have it sitting in a cupboard after it's been.
We also touched on that with, well, it's focused on a bit actually in the Golden Fleece course, which itself was, like I said, based on the hero's journey. So we started off with a reflection of what we've been spinning and what we've been doing up to this point, and then taking up the challenge of the journey and moving on. But then we get to about halfway through the course and start looking back again at what we've done and where we're going, and then building on that as well. So using those first yarns from the beginning of the course as the building block for the next step in the process. Yeah. Which actually at that point we were getting quite a lot of people would send us feedback like, I've really found my thing now. This has really helped me focus in to actually what I really want to do. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting, that it sort of brings that kind of clarity by looking back as well, like we do with many things, of course. Anything in hindsight is often, with a different perspective. Yeah, and I think it's definitely a journey.
Yeah, and I think it's a time too, when we're all at home, that you do become a bit reflective, and you look back and think, actually, I'm going to try that or do this and stuff. And one of the other things too was stash busting. So obviously with a lot of knitters, they have a lot of commercial yarn or hand-dyed yarn sitting in stashes. And we've been talking about that, and we just talked about this before we started the chat, but I know one of the things from a hand knitting perspective is that there's elements of texture and color, particularly if you've because you're able to card in, like whether it's a HECO dyed product, or you've bought somebody, or you've done your own drum carding, you've been able to add in really interesting elements of long runs of color like this into a yarn. So I'm sure that everybody has got, regardless of whether they're a knitter or not, has got one of these books in their library. I mean,
his colour work is just incredible. It's very inspirational.
It is, but I've been looking at, and actually that's a really good visual there. And I know Maree did a class with him when he came to New Zealand a number of years ago, and one of the things that he did in the class, and she showed me the piece of work, is he got out I think he had them all create a picture or a painting of a scene of something that is near and dear to them. So she lives at West Shore, so she created sort of like the scene of the beach and the ocean and the shore and what have you. So once you had that, what you then had to do is recreate that scene in yarn.
Yeah.
and thinking about color and texture and light and dark and all of those sorts of things. And so, I mean, like I've just got this here, and these are a number of photographs, and I don't know how clearly this will come up.
They look gorgeous.
Yeah, and just the inspiration that he has. Oh, I'm so bad as
Oh,
well.
I can see succulents there. So
Yes,
cool.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just it. It's about if we've got all of this time, challenging ourselves, isn't it? Looking, having a photograph or looking at a color at what we've got and think, actually, how can I translate that into my weaving or my knitting or my crochet or, we've got time, haven't we, for many of us?
Yeah. I kind of feel like I should, but I
Yeah,
haven't.
you and I, not so much, but many of us have time.
Well, I kind of try and integrate that stuff. It's another interesting thing, though, because I mean, generally speaking, most people are working most of the time. This is fairly exceptional circumstances at the moment. So one of the other themes through the magazine has been, about how to fit in crafting and creativity with a busy life and how to sort of de-stress that and slow down. And I kind of feel like maybe one of the good things that's actually going to come out of this whole situation, and we need to find the good things in it, not focus on the bad things, because we know the bad things are there. But I think, to come out of it with some kind of positivity and forward thinking, I think we need to be able to draw on this experience and say, actually, it wasn't such a bad thing to have all that extra time with the family. It wasn't such a bad thing to just like stop everything and be creative and do the projects that I've been putting off. And so maybe that will help us find another kind of balance in the new normal as well.
Yeah.
And include some of that, because it's so easy to fill up your schedule with work and activities and going out things and responsibilities.
Yeah.
And this is something I noticed when I was living in the Netherlands for 12 years, is people there tend to be, we all do the same things. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. We have the same needs and do the same things. But for some reason there, it all seemed to get quite scheduled ahead of time. And there was, the weekends were when you could do your shopping, and a lot of places were shut on Sundays. So it was all had to be squeezed into Saturdays. And then Sundays were for, family gatherings and birthday parties. And people were like booking ahead for months. And you could feel that there was a certain amount of stress that went with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, this could be one of the upcoming issues in the magazine, is to start exploring those ideas with other craftspeople and see, what have you learned from this difficult period that we've been through, and how can we put that to use in our creative lives as we move forward as well.
I think actually you've touched on something. I know, predominantly it is a very female heavy disciplines, and by far not all female, but as women especially, and we have a tendency, I think, to be too hard on ourselves. I am the first, I'll put my hand up, I'm so guilty of this, that we have this pressure that we place on ourselves to be perfect and the best that we can be, and perfect and about absolutely everything. Like, as you
please everybody,
we have to please everybody. We have to have happy children. We need to be seen to be on top of it. We have to make sure that everything is running smoothly, that all of those things there. And you end up, I think that there is a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of stress and depression and other mental health issues that will actually appear because of that stress, that this perceived stress, the stress that we place on ourselves. And I know for me personally, one of the ways that I get through that is doing something like this, where I not force myself, but I mindfully say to myself, you know what? I'm actually going to take half an hour. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. I'm going to sit down, and I really want to get those 3 rows off, because I want to see what that looks like.
And stop multitasking.
Yeah.
Yep.
I put the phone down. Anyone that again knows me quite well knows that my phone is on silent all the time. So it's not that I don't love people, but I got to a point, because so much of my life with multiple businesses, which all runs multiple profiles, and all the different things that I'm doing, I do feel like a juggler, that I'm doing this all of the time. And a device is a really wonderful tool that actually helps you do that, but it's also your worst enemy. And
Yeah.
I got some advice a few years ago, and they said, don't let the device rule you, you rule the device.
That's so it's easy to say, it's hard to. I
Hard
also
to
saw
execute.
a lovely postcard thing the other day
Mm.
that I now have on my wall that says offline is the new luxury. I wonder if that's now going to change, however, because online is now giving us
Yeah,
community and contact. And so maybe it's a rebalancing time at
yeah,
the moment. And
yeah.
I think it's really interesting to start thinking now about what we want to change and how we want things to look in our new normal,
Yeah.
because we have an opportunity to shape our new normal. And with tinyStudio, one of the early boosts for it, like the basic principles, and I actually wrote like a page for myself on what I wanted in the magazine. And one of the things was to provide opportunities for people to actually stop and relax
Mm,
and make time to do mindful activities that are
mm,
creative. So that was always part of that. So I'm sort of hoping that we can bring that sort of forward again
mm. And there's
with our
always
content.
and it's also for me one of the joyous things when I'm working with people, and I don't get actually out to have as much customer contact as I would always like, but I particularly love it through Knit August Nights when I do go out to shows and events. Is one of the things I love more than anything is when people bring me stuff to show me. I love that. And just seeing what it is that they love to do, what they love to make, and what it is that brings them joy. See, because
Yeah,
for me, when I see that and I just say, this has brought me so much joy, I've really loved making this, I've loved this yarn, or I enjoyed this fabric, or I've tried this for the first time. For me, I'm like, "Phew, job done."
yeah,
That
yeah,
is huge sense of achievement, because that's what it's about. It's about creating that spark in somebody and
yeah.
having somebody be that those moments of joy that they receive and being able to create, I think is just so incredibly wonderful and very, very precious. And I think it's something that we will clutch onto and cherish in what is going to be the new normal moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. And in a way, I sort of hope that we return to some of the really simple things in our lives as well. Baking bread. I'm
Yeah,
seeing a lot of people
I
posting
know, loads of people.
amazing looking bread on their pages. So
Yeah,
even just, baking stuff, that it takes time. And I remember my mum used to bake every Friday,
yeah,
was baking day, and we used to help, and it was, sort of group activity.
yeah.
It was always a bit of a, competition to who was going to get to lick the spoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
But
think
that was the thing, and she always made time to do it. She used to bake
yeah,
bread every day. Yeah.
yeah. So while I've still got Susie here, anyone got any questions for Susie about the magazine, about craft, about just sort of anything really? We
I should just say too, I'm going to be making a blog post to talk about this a bit more. But the magazine, as you said, it's digital. I did have plans to go to print with the next issue.
Hmm.
And I've been working really, really hard on that for a few months, trying to get that ready to go. And it was, so close I could taste it. But at the moment, with the current global situation, our distribution and so on were not reliable enough. I couldn't count on it happening in the way it should have. And of course, I always want people to be happy and excited about something like that and not be worrying about, is it going to turn up? Have I just spent all my money and it's,
Yeah.
and I'm going to need it? And 12-month subscriptions are a big commitment. At the moment, we've got a monthly ongoing one, which is much more manageable. So I am going to postpone that. I hope that by November, which will be our second anniversary, things will have settled down and we can return to that exciting activity, because honestly, having them in print is just wonderful. But
Annette's saying,
we're
please
still
hold up
going to.
the hard copies, she's saying.
Oh, okay. Hard copy. There you go, Annette. The latest version. You can see how thick it is. I mean, it's 120 pages
Yeah.
of content. It's a really substantial magazine, digital as well as. And I mean, look, here we go. Does that look familiar?
Yes.
We've got some neat stuff, and I'm very, very happy that Skeins and also Craft here are
Yeah.
sponsoring the magazine as well, because it's absolutely vital in order to be able to keep it running, that we have some sponsorship and advertising as well as amazing contributors. So, I mean, we've got some really neat content, and the photography is just, look at this, just magnificent. I don't know if you can see that okay, but
I'm so glad you showed that. Is that sort of like a small weaving, is it?
Oh yeah, this is some of Arlene's where's the camera?
I know.
Arlene's weaving here.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And that sort of weaving now, that picture weaving, is that what you'd call it? Picture weaving?
Well, it's sort of like a tapestry weaving, really. It's a kind of combination of techniques which I love, of sort of tapestry and traditional weaving.
Yeah.
Very free form, and you can use up all your bits and pieces.
And one of our staff made one of these, which we've got hanging on our wall at the shop.
Yep.
And it's so striking. And it's, in terms of using up your bits and pieces. And she literally just did it over a broom handle.
Well, I was going to say, you don't need a lot of expensive tools or equipment to do that kind of weaving. Yeah. We've got an article coming up in the next issue on weaving with branches. So you can go out in the backyard, pull a branch off the tree, or wait for a windfall and do a bit of weaving like that. I've also, this is one of my loves, New Zealand.
Yeah.
So we do incorporate this, but I've had people comment very favorably, things like, I love it when I open the magazine because it feels like I'm traveling the world.
Yeah.
We have articles, some friends in the Netherlands, of course, who write regular articles, Tricky Thread from the Netherlands. We've had articles from Eastern Europe. There's an amazing weaver in, where is he? Slovenia, I think. Is it still Slovenia? Serbia, sorry. I think he's in Serbia. Just a wonderful character. He makes the most extravagantly gorgeous weavings using a mix of very traditional sort of 12-shaft weaving patterns with unusual textures through them. And he makes big pieces, and they're really quite gorgeous.
Definitely Serbia.
And then we have, I also include things like, the things that knitters love.
Yeah.
Like Sharon's amazing pottery. See the knitted cups he does there? Yeah. So it's really quite exciting putting these together every 3 months. It's a big job, but it seems like the time just whizzes by while I'm doing it, because the content we're getting in is just lovely. And that's probably the biggest part of my job. Is it sounds terrible because it's so cool to do, and I'm calling it a job. It's just basically trawling through Facebook and Instagram looking for people doing amazing things, and then contacting them and saying, hey, would you want to be a contributor? So that is quite a big part of what I'm doing. And honestly, there's so much being done. It's kind of a little bit overwhelming. I start sort of scrolling through Instagram like, wow, it's just the talent that people have is amazing.
Well, one of the things I know I talked about it ages ago for school holidays, and I did it as a piece on one of the videos. Oh gosh, might have been last year or the year before, but it's definitely started popping up again, is macrame. And you're seeing more and more of that now. And I mean, gosh, at the end of the day, you can do it with garden string.
Let me just recommend for macrame stuff, this person here, Lindsay Campbell. We've had a couple of articles for her. She's written several books. You can get them on Amazon on her macrame sort of tapestry blend. It's sort of, I do love that sort of mixed media thing.
Yeah.
And she also has online courses, so you can take them online. And she has really great little stash busting things like this, which is just a little frame and a little bit of cloth, and you can use up lots of your, I mean, these are even just literally ends, scraps, cut off bits of knitting projects.
Well, actually, I had an email question this morning for someone looking for pre-cut rug yarn, which we don't do. But I suddenly thought, how many people have got one of those latch hooks lurking in the cupboard?
Yeah, I have.
I mean, I mean, I don't, but I had a number of my aunts. I mean, when I was a kid, because I grew up on a farm, and I have like a rural family, and I've got 5 aunts on one side of a family, and all of them are really crafty. And so, I was so lucky. My grandmother taught me to crochet at 4. I was knitting by the time I was 5. My grandfather he did macrame. So he was a drover and a horseman and a farrier. So they all did, there's a tradition amongst them around using macrame to create belts and cinches and
of course. I was thinking, why would that be connected? But
yeah,
that makes sense.
For saddles and stuff. So that's actually the traditional way that they would do it, because it needs to be exceptionally strong. And so when you think about it with macrame, you're creating a series of knots down an element. So you're creating a very, very, very strong strap. So he taught me how to do that. And so you've got all of this craft that gets passed down. And I've been unbelievably fortunate and blessed that I have had the resource of family members that have been able to share that with me. Not everybody does, but I think that's again why the magazine is more relevant now than ever, because if you haven't got somebody to be able to pass that down, you're able to then go back and access video. You can access a community. You can access.
Yeah, and with the digital version, we fill it up with live links too, so you can actually go directly from the page straight out, so people can click on the skein stuff, say, oh wow, what have they got going on at the moment on their sales, because you guys do awesome sales, and they can just click straight from that. Also from the articles as well, so if there's anything that has a link, it's just live. And you can do that from the PDF, or you can also do that. We have the EPUB version, so you can load it up with your Apple Books app. Yeah. And you can also click out of that directly into live links too, also to videos and so on as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Susie, this has been an absolute joy. I've been meaning to do this for ages, both you and I. We've been trying to get together and come in. Isn't it incredible how we've had to teach ourselves all this technology to do this?
I know. Just hope it sticks.
I sometimes I wonder whether or not I've created a rod for my own back, because I thought, I'll do these quarantine diaries every day, 11 o'clock. That'll give me enough time. So my special quiet time in the morning is because I've got a young teenage son and a tween, almost teenage son.
Yeah.
So they are not early risers.
No, mine's 12, and he's just got up.
Yeah. So same. So that time, the golden time for me is that sort of little vignette of time, a couple of hours first thing in the morning, where I can just and have that knitting time, which is really lovely. And then I thought, I'll do this podcast for everybody when the new normal starts. Don't get your hopes up that it's going to be every day.
Maree.
I may not do it, but it's been great. It's been so good to be able to share so many things and learn I've learned so much already just in the last couple of weeks. So it's been great.
And honestly, for me as a audience member, it's great just to be able to do the same thing, just to relax and watch you chat about stuff and listen to things and see what everyone's making and so on. So I've been really enjoying these too.
Can everyone hear my dog barking outside? Because I've left him out this time. Between the pair of them, they gate crash these all the time. See, can you hear?
Oh, yeah. I did a live stream the other day with Andrew Poe from Macrame. Yeah. And my dog was in the backyard barking through the whole thing. I don't know. She never does this. But that day, she was like, bark, bark, bark. And we were all busy. No one could stop her, apparently. So, yeah, they do tend to crash things. But they make up for it.
Well, thank you very much, Susie. We will make tinyStudio magazine. Fiberygoodness.com is the website, and it's Fibery spelled Fibery. The
American way. Yeah.
The American way, goodness.com. Yep. And then you can jump on there and subscribe, have a look, check everything out. And remember, skeins.com for us. Make sure you like, follow, and do all of that good stuff. I'm everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it.
If anyone wants to see what happens when you dye skeins, naked skeins, by the way, check out my dyeing videos too, because that's pretty much all I use.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Susie. Thank you to everybody that joined us today, particularly those from the Tiny Studio community. It's so good to have you on board. And tomorrow, I have no idea. Actually, no, I do know what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. I've actually finally got some content sorted. So tomorrow, I had a little cunning idea in terms of how that we can go and record some of our journeys, because we photograph a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Hopefully, I'm going to get a whole whack of knitting done today and show you some progress on my Rambler. But until then, thank you, Susie.
Thank you.
And we will see everybody again tomorrow at 11 o'clock here on the Quarantine Diaries. Bye.